Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. As you probably saw from the link, and I will show right now, today's topic that we are covering is the most common one we see amongst people that are either retired or who are about to retire, and that is the question, will your retirement savings last as long as you do? And there are no shortage of things we could say about this. It is, from what surveys show, the number one concern that people who are retired or who are about to retire have. So, without further ado, let's get into what this looks like for each person and the steps you can take to hopefully mitigate that unfortunate consequence if you do outlive your money. So here's the reality of the situation where a lot of this fear comes from. Americans are, on average, living a lot longer than they ever did before. The average 65-year-old today does have, in fact, a very significant chance of living well into their 90s. And the thing that I've noticed, especially, but this is true also from retirement surveys, most retirement plans often assume people only will need income for around 15 to 20 years. I cannot tell you how many times I have sat in meetings and I have had somebody, for whatever reason, usually men, but not always, I guess. But most of the time, there's somebody who says, "Oh, I only think I'll live to be this age," and typically it's not a very old age. Typically, it's maybe in their 70s, perhaps later. But the reality is, with all the advancements in medicine and other factors at play, people are potentially living a lot longer. And so having a plan that is geared to only last you until you're maybe in your 70s or 80s is doing yourself a huge disservice, because the reality is you could live a lot longer. And then the reality is you could potentially run out of money if you are only expecting to live so long. This gap, as it says here, between life expectancy and financial planning creates what we have termed to be, or what has been termed to be, longevity risk, and it's a very real possibility. So, surveys have showed, and we'll go over this a little bit, but what is some of the top priorities and top concerns of people who are retirees is, like I mentioned, number one, the fear of outliving savings. And this was taken from a retirement survey conducted by the Employee Benefit Research Institute. It found that 61% of people surveyed cited that the fear of outliving their savings was their number one retirement concern. More concerning, or as concerning as that, is that 47% of people surveyed recently said they didn't have a written income plan for retirement, or really just lacked any clear strategy. And to compound with all that, 73% of people surveyed said that they were perhaps miscalculating their true healthcare expenses as it pertained to retirement. Those numbers, frankly, ring true for a lot of people, but are very concerning. And that would explain why a lot of this anxiety comes from retirement and whether or not people are going to be able to afford it. So if you've ever felt this way about your retirement savings, whether they'll last or not, don't feel like you're going at this alone. Clearly, based on the numbers, you're not. But as it says at the bottom, uncertainty doesn't have to be your reality. Let's review, though, some of the realities of the situation and what are some of the threats that do have to be addressed during retirement and how we can potentially mitigate them later. Number one would be inflation erosion. And anybody who's lived even through the last 5, 6 years will be able to testify to this. Almost nothing costs what it used to. When we look back even to 2022, which was just 3 years ago, based on the time of this recording, we had inflation hit a 9% number in June of that year. And even though inflation has come down since then, as most will testify to, that doesn't mean prices have come down. And even with a modest 3% annual inflation, it could cut your purchasing power in half over a period of 24 years. And let's really drive this home a little bit. Let's say you're 65 years old around now, at the time when you're watching this. If you have $100,000 today, by the time you're 89, that only buys $50,000 worth. I mean, that's a staggering number. But the reality, too, as most know who are either in retirement or approaching it, healthcare is a real thing that you have to address. So the average couple needs approximately now, and this is not a typo, about $315,000 worth of funds just to pay for healthcare expenses in retirement. That's a staggering number, and that does not include long-term care which in many cases, especially depending on the area you live in, can well exceed $100,000 annually. In many cases, that could be per person. So we have to obviously factor that in when it comes to retirement, because healthcare is a very real need during retirement. But also, as most people know, the older we get, the more healthcare we actually do need, the more doctor services we need. So this is something that has to be addressed if you're going to tackle making your funds last in retirement. Another that we've experienced a number of times just in the last few years, even this year, is market volatility. Withdrawing funds during market downturns accelerates portfolio depletion. But the reality is that you don't necessarily turn off your withdrawals just because there's a market downturn, because people still need to live. They still have living expenses they have to pay. So a poorly timed sequence of returns can really devastate even substantial nest eggs over time. And one of the last ones that I think is more of a silent killer when it comes to these, or silently creeps in, is tax inefficiency. So when you do not coordinate withdrawals from various types of accounts, it can push you into higher tax brackets. It can also erode your retirement assets, but also you might be paying more in taxes than you actually should or could otherwise if you had a more proactive strategy to mitigate those taxes and knew which accounts to draw from and how and when. So these are just four of some of the things that are threats to retirement security and longevity. Some are more obvious than others, but it's worth highlighting these as we go through the presentation. So this is a question that I would pose to anyone out there who's close to retiring or already is retired. And that is, if you knew exactly how much you could safely spend each month without worrying, would that change how you enjoy retirement? And what we have found, and this is not always the case, but it does happen a lot. A lot of retirees either spend too cautiously because they're concerned about running out of money. They, as a result, will miss out on experiences that they would have enjoyed otherwise. Or they spend too freely thinking that money will never run out, or that a market downturn will never happen, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they really do risk their financial stability and security in the future. But the truth is, you don't have to fall into either of those camps. It's not an either or. There is a better way to approach these things. So let me give you really some of the meat and potatoes in this presentation and 6 practical steps and strategies that people can take to try to really preserve their financial future. Number one, you have to create what we would call a dynamic withdrawal strategy. Many people have heard about the 4% rule, which says that when you retire, you can safely withdraw, in some cases, around 4% of your portfolio pre-tax and have it last the duration of your lifetime, assuming different growth rates and things of that nature. That rule, however, though, is very outdated for a lot of reasons, one of which is due to inflation. Things have gotten a lot more expensive than they used to, but also tax laws are changing. Plus, I would argue that a withdrawal rate is going to be different for each couple or person individually, because each person's financial picture is different. Their financial needs are different, their assets are different, liabilities, living expenses, and other multiple income sources, et cetera, et cetera. So in order to best satisfy your own needs, it's best to develop a flexible spending plan that adjusts not only to market conditions, but also tax implications, but also it addresses your specific income needs, not just now, but also throughout retirement, and can adjust as your life does. The reality is, no income plan should ever be static, or what we call set it and forget it. It should always be dynamic and able to adjust and change as your life or external factors do. Number 2 would be optimize your income sources. And I would add to that, have multiple income sources by strategically coordinating things like Social Security, pensions if you still have one, retirement accounts, after-tax accounts, joint accounts, other income streams. This can really, in essence, help you streamline how much you're going to be drawing from and which accounts you need to be drawing from at what time. But also you have a better way of balancing out what you really need to live off of and what you maybe perhaps would only want to live off of. But also, if there are market downturns, you don't necessarily rely on just one income source, but also, sadly, the majority of people in this country rely solely on Social Security. And I don't have those stats in front of me, but if if anything does happen to the Social Security system in the next few years, which I know is a question for a lot of people that we can address another time, the reality is their financial futures might be in jeopardy. So the timing and sequencing of these decisions can in reality add hundreds of thousands of dollars to your income over the duration of your lifetime. The third step to this, and I would argue this is one of the best or most important, or perhaps the cornerstone of this, is really building a tax efficient withdrawal plan. People need to understand which accounts to draw from first, and they need to have a strategic plan to withdraw from taxable accounts, tax deferred accounts, tax free accounts. And just from the studies we've seen and the projections we've run, this can truly equate to potentially tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax savings, which would then obviously allow your resources to last that much longer. I cannot tell you what a big difference it makes when a couple or a person takes the time to plan out when they're going to draw from which accounts at what time and are really proactive with their tax planning. The reality is most people, unfortunately, go to just file their taxes once a year, and at that point they just are told what they either owe or what they're getting back or whatever the case may be. But our job is to be more holistic and say, here are ways that you can proactively mitigate taxes before you ever get to the point that you're actually filing, which will help keep more money in your pocket. The fourth strategy you can implement is really developing an aligned investment strategy. A lot of people will ask sometimes, what's the best investment out there? Or is such and such a good investment? Is this stock a good investment? Is crypto a good investment? Is whatever the case is. My comeback to that is almost always going to be maybe, maybe not, but what is best for you? And so it's so important that you implement an investment strategy that is designed to help meet your particular retirement income needs while maintaining a risk level that's appropriate to your situation. As a CFP practitioner, I'm a legal fiduciary, and as fiduciary asset managers, our goal so many times, if not every single time, is to figure out what is the most appropriate recommendation for each person's situation while taking the least amount of risk possible to still give them the highest possibility of the desired outcome they want. If you're taking that kind of approach, you're looking to have a sustainable growth in income that is going to be meeting your needs, not just now, but also in the future, without taking what I would call unnecessary risk or being exposed to unnecessary volatility in the markets. A fifth step that is absolutely critical, people have to plan, and I already mentioned this, but they have to plan for healthcare expenses. You have to create a dedicated healthcare plan and budget that's going to cover some of these things, but not exclusively to these. Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, out-of-pocket costs, potential long-term care needs, hospital stays, prescription drugs, what maybe physical therapy. All different types of healthcare related expenses need to be accounted for on the front end of retirement. And if you haven't taken the time to do that, I would highly encourage you to do that now, even if you are already retired. And one of the last steps that I would argue is really essential is monitoring and adjusting things regularly. No retirement plan should just be static, set it and forget it. There should be regular reviews that are ensuring whatever strategy or strategies you're implementing or utilizing adapt to whatever's changing in your life, but also changing in the markets, as well as evolving as tax laws do, and a variety of other things that can have direct and indirect impacts on your lives. If you take care and really adhere to at least these 6 core principles and strategies, you will be in a significantly better position than you would be otherwise. But the reality is, most people hear that and they think, okay, no problem. I'll just take these and I'll go and I'll do it myself. And grant, there are some people that'll do that and they could be okay financially. But DIY retirement planning so many times can lead to very costly mistakes. And you have to really consider what is at stake. So for example, and I taught a whole seminar on this and I have another video somewhere in our library about this. We can include a link down below. But claiming Social Security at the wrong time, and this is no exaggeration, can cost over $100,000 difference over the course of your lifetime, especially depending on what age you are, whether you're married or not, how long each spouse can live, etc. That is a substantial figure when you extrapolate it out over a retirement that could last 30 years or longer. Another risk to this, doing it yourself, is suboptimal withdrawal strategies that could, in reality, deplete portfolios 5 to 10 years earlier than necessary. That is a very, very significant figure. If you have potentially 5 to 10 less years of your funds lasting during retirement because you did not have the optimal withdrawal strategy, that's the difference between going to be a greeter at a well-known retail shop versus being able to peacefully and joyfully live out your golden years. Another example, though, of a major risk doing it yourself is missing tax planning opportunities, which can leave thousands on the table, not just over the course of your retirement, but annually. The tax code is a very complex thing. We won't pretend to be CPAs, we're not, but our job is to try to help clients proactively plan and mitigate taxes wherever possible. And we do have CPAs on staff that they're not going to prepare our clients' returns, but they will help provide proactive tax advice as part of our planning process so that hopefully by the time a client gets to their CPA to file their taxes, they're telling them, wow, this is great what you implemented. That's going to help you save X amount in taxes. At least that's our goal. Because the more you can save on taxes by adhering to the tax code and taking advantages of the different facets of it, the more it's going to keep in your pocket, the longer your funds are going to last. Another one is really inappropriate risk exposure for your stage of life. That increases not only vulnerability, but also risk and volatility. Just because a person was investing a particular way previously, keep in mind, too, we've had a number of bull runs where the markets keep going up. Doesn't mean that's going to be appropriate once they stop working and once they start relying on these funds to draw from. The years of people working are really the accumulation years, but the years where people are retired are the preservation years. You should always have funds, in my opinion, especially for long term, invested in a way that at least can outpace inflation, but never to a degree that if there's a market downturn or a recession, that you're going to suffer such catastrophic losses that your entire retirement plan needs to be thrown out the window. And now whatever your goals were are not achievable. So here's what I would want someone to consider who's contemplating going out alone. Would having a fiduciary asset manager, somebody who's legally bound to manage your assets in a way that puts your interests first, and a CFP practitioner, which stands for Certified Financial Planner, if they were in your corner, someone who is legally bound to put your interests first, would that give you greater confidence in your strategy and hopefully confidence that you don't have to worry about outliving your money? If the answer is no, then that's okay. At the very least, you get some information out of this. If the answer is yes, this is what potentially working together with myself and our team would potentially look like. The first conversation is always a discovery. It's a chance for us to get to know you and you get to know us, see if there's mutually a good fit. We discuss things like what's your financial picture? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What's your vision for retirement? What are your concerns? And like I said, there's no obligation because really it's just a chance for us to get to know each other, to see if the next step makes sense or not. If it does make sense, the next step is really comprehensive analysis. We get a detailed assessment of your current trajectory and personalized recommendations to your situation. The next step is we customize the strategy, but then we also help implement it. It can't just be that we give you recommendations and then we have you go off and try and do it yourself. We actually present a clear, actionable plan designed specifically to your situation and goals and then help you implement it. And then the last step is ongoing partnership where we're regularly reviewing how the strategy is doing, what's happening in your personal life, what's happening to external factors that could influence you or perhaps influence your situation. And then we're guiding you through that and making recommendations as to what to do and when and how we could perhaps need to adjust as things do change. So that's really what we want to cover in a nutshell. I'll include a few disclosures in a moment. But the next step is really simple. If you want to at least have a conversation, I would encourage you to reach out to us through the information below. You can either email us at info@mac25capital.com or you may call us at 832-966-0712. It's complimentary. The phone call or meeting usually takes between 30 minutes and an hour, depending. It's no obligation, but we'll at least review your current situation, identify opportunities to strengthen your retirement plan. Also, we'll address any potential risks that you either know about or don't know about, and you'll leave with clarity about your options, whether we work together or not. So what it would mean to you really is to have the confidence that your money will last as long as you need it to, and that you can potentially enjoy retirement without constant worry about your financial future. So The retirees we found who usually sleep the soundest, so to speak, or have the most peace of mind aren't those with the most money. They're the ones who have the clearest plans because they know no matter what happens, they're going to be okay. So we hope that you found that information useful and helpful. If you do have any questions, feel free, like I said, to reach out to us at info@mac25capital.com, or you can call us, the number that was just shown on the screen. We hope everyone enjoyed this, and we hope you all have a blessed day.